My son wrote, "Do not expect me to take care of you in old age. I have my own life and family." I read the message carefully. I did not argue. I calmly replied, "Okay." Then I rewrote my will. When he discovered what I had done, he burst into my house demanding answers. Before I continue, I am glad you are here with me. Please like this video, listen to my story until the end, and tell me which city you are listening from. That helps me see how far this story has reached. I spent 32 years building a life I was proud of. My husband, Robert, and I raised our son, David, in a modest but comfortable home in Portland, Oregon. We were not wealthy, but we were responsible. We saved money, invested carefully, and paid off our mortgage early. When Robert passed away 5 years ago from a sudden heart attack, I inherited everything we built together: the house, his pension, and our investments. It was not a fortune, but it was enough for me to live comfortably and possibly leave something meaningful behind. David had always seemed like a good son, or at least that is what I believed. He called regularly, visited on holidays, and brought his wife, Jessica, along with their 2 children. We had Sunday dinners together. We celebrated birthdays. I helped when I could, babysitting and sometimes giving financial help when they needed a new roof or when Jessica's car broke down. At the time, I did not ask myself an important question. Was I helping as a loving grandmother, or was I being taken advantage of? The first warning sign appeared 6 months ago. David called me sounding stressed. He said they needed $15,000 for medical bills. He explained that Jessica's mother was undergoing cancer treatment that insurance would not cover. I did not hesitate. I transferred the money the very next day. But something felt wrong. At our next family dinner, I asked Jessica how her mother was recovering. Jessica looked confused and asked, "Recovering from what?" David quickly stepped in and said I must have misunderstood and that it was preventive treatment. At that moment, I saw the lie in his eyes. From that day on, I started paying close attention, truly paying attention. I noticed how Jessica's expression changed whenever I mentioned my investment portfolio. I noticed how David slowly redirected conversations toward my future plans. He casually suggested assisted living. He said I was getting older and that it might be easier for me. I was 71 years old and ran 3 miles every morning. I was fully independent. What exactly did they believe I needed help with? Then came the text message that changed everything. I was sitting in my kitchen drinking coffee. Morning light came through the windows Robert had installed with his own hands. My phone buzzed. David's name appeared on the screen. I smiled, expecting a picture of my grandchildren. Instead, I read words that felt deeply hurtful. "Do not expect me to take care of you when you are old. I have my own life and family." My hands shook as I read it again and again. There was no argument before it, no warning. We had dinner together just 3 days earlier, and everything seemed normal. What caused this message? Had this resentment been there all along, hidden behind smiles and holiday visits? I sat there for nearly an hour, my coffee growing cold. I wondered how I was supposed to respond. Should I beg? Apologize for being a burden I never asked to be? Defend myself against accusations I did not understand? I decided on one thing immediately. I would not do any of that. I took a deep breath, straightened my posture the way Robert always admired, and typed 2 words. Okay. Nothing more. I sent the message and placed my phone down. My heart was racing, but my hands were steady. If David wanted to draw this boundary, I would respect it. Respect, however, should go both ways. That afternoon, I called my attorney, Thomas Chen. He had helped me when Robert passed away and assisted with estate planning. I told him I needed to revise my will and asked if he could see me that week. He asked if everything was all right. I told him everything was perfectly clear, and it was. For the first time in months, possibly years, I saw my situation clearly. I was not going to be anyone's retirement plan. I was not going to be anyone's future payday. If David had his own life and family to focus on, then I had my own life and legacy to decide. Over the next 2 days, I carefully thought about what I wanted and who truly deserved what I had worked for my entire life. The answer came faster than I expected. I made notes, created lists, and researched charities. By Thursday morning, when I walked into Thomas's office, I knew exactly what I wanted. What I did not know was that David still had access to my bank statements through an old joint account we had set up years ago for emergencies. I did not know he checked it often. I did not know he would see the payment to Chen and Associates, attorney at law, and I did not know how far he would go when he realized what I had done. The meeting with Thomas lasted less than an hour. He did not judge or question my decisions. He listened, took notes, and said the new documents would be ready for signing within a week. When I left his office, I felt lighter than I had in months. I drove home through familiar streets, past the park where I pushed David on the swings, past the ice cream shop where we celebrated his graduation. The memories did not hurt. They simply existed, separate from the present. People change, relationships change. Some grow stronger. Others reveal weaknesses that were always there. Back home, I made lunch and tried to return to my routine, but my thoughts kept returning to that text message. Its cruelty still hurt, but something else had started to grow. Curiosity. What did David really want? I pulled out my financial records and reviewed them carefully. The $15,000 for Jessica's mother, $5,000 2 years ago for what David called a family emergency fund, $3,000 here, $7,000 there. Each amount seemed small on its own. I had never questioned them or added them up. Now I did. Over the past 4 years, I had given them more than $47,000. Had any of it truly been for what they claimed, or had I been supporting their lifestyle while they waited for something bigger? My phone rang. David's name appeared. My stomach tightened. I let it ring several times before answering. He said we needed to talk. I asked calmly what he wanted to talk about. He asked about my meeting with my lawyer. That was when I realized he knew about the joint account. I had forgotten to close it after Robert passed away. That was my mistake, one I would not repeat. I told him I was simply updating documents and that it was routine estate planning. He told me I could not change my will without discussing it with him. Something cold settled in my chest. I told him it was my will and my assets. He reminded me of everything he had done for me. I reminded him that I lived independently and managed my own life. He said he was my son and that we were family. I agreed. And I told him that family does not send messages telling their elderly mother not to expect care or support. He tried to take it back. I stopped him. I told him I was respecting his wishes. He had his life and family. I had mine. He called me stupid. I closed my eyes, counted to 5, told him I had an appointment, and ended the call. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear. They were shaking from anger and from the realization that I had spent years being manipulated by someone I raised, loved, and sacrificed for. How long had he seen me as nothing more than a source of money that was still alive? I knew I needed a plan. Updating my will was already done, but that was not enough. I needed to protect myself and protect my assets. I had to make sure that everything I had built could not be contested or challenged later. Thomas had mentioned living trusts and irrevocable transfers. I needed to fully understand my options. More importantly, I needed to understand who I was dealing with. Was David simply greedy, or was this something carefully planned? Was Jessica behind this, or were they working together? And how far would they be willing to go? That evening, I researched elder financial abuse, undue influence, and estate litigation. The stories I found were disturbing. Adult children draining their parents' accounts, forging legal documents, and in some cases even rushing death to gain access to inheritances sooner. I did not want to believe my own son could be capable of that, but the text message was still on my phone. It was proof I could not ignore. He had shown me who he was, and I needed to accept it. By midnight, I had the outline of a plan. I would document everything, I would keep records, I would prepare evidence if I ever needed it, and I would make careful, deliberate changes that would protect what belonged to me and ensure it went to people and causes that truly deserved it. David said he wanted his own life. Fine. He could have it without my money supporting it. The next morning, I returned to Thomas's office with a clear purpose. I told him I wanted to set up a living trust and transfer my primary assets into it immediately. Thomas leaned back in his chair and studied me over his glasses. He told me it was a major step. Once assets are placed into an irrevocable trust, access is limited. He asked if I was certain. I reminded him that I was 71 years old. I had a pension, Social Security, and more than enough in my checking account to live comfortably for many years. I did not need my house or investment accounts to be liquid. I needed them protected. He nodded and asked who I needed protection from. I told him it was from anyone who might claim I was incompetent or unduly influenced when my final wishes were known. Then I said the words I had avoided for days. From my son. Thomas did not look surprised. He said he would prepare the documents, but warned that the process would take time. He also reminded me that David still had access to my financial information. I told him I was closing that account immediately and opening a new one at a different bank. David would not see another transaction. Thomas agreed, but warned me that once David noticed the transfers to the trust, he would know something serious had happened. I told him I was not hiding. I was simply protecting what was mine. I left Thomas's office and drove straight to Pacific Northwest Bank, where Robert and I had kept our accounts for 30 years. I closed the joint account with David, opened a new personal account, and transferred all automatic payments. The bank manager, Patricia, who had known me for years, completed the process efficiently but looked concerned. She asked if everything was all right since closing accounts like that was unusual. I assured her everything was fine and that I was simplifying my finances. I smiled, but she did not seem convinced. By Thursday, the trust documents were ready. Thomas had worked quickly and discreetly. The Margaret Morrison Living Trust would hold my house, investment portfolio, and savings. The only thing excluded was the checking account I used for daily expenses. The beneficiaries were chosen carefully: a scholarship fund at Robert's old university, the animal shelter where we adopted our dog, Max, a children's hospital, and a small inheritance for my niece, Emma, who had stayed in touch for years without ever asking for anything. David's name did not appear anywhere. I signed the documents in Thomas's office with his paralegal and secretary as witnesses. When it was complete, Thomas told me the transfers would take about a week. After that, the assets would be locked in place. I told him I understood and thanked him. That evening David called. I did not answer. He called 3 more times. On the 5th call, I finally picked up. He demanded to know where I had been and said he had been trying to reach me for days. I told him calmly that I had been busy and asked what he needed. He told me my bank account was gone. He said he tried to check my finances and the account no longer existed. That confirmed it. He had been monitoring me regularly. The realization felt like a physical blow. I told him I had closed the account and streamlined my banking. He sounded panicked. He asked what was going on and whether I was sick. A week earlier, his concern might have affected me. Now I only heard fear. Fear that his expected inheritance was disappearing. I told him I was healthy and simply organizing my affairs. He accused me of acting paranoid and asked if someone had been influencing me. I told him the only person who had said anything about him was him. I reminded him of his text message. He tried to explain that he was stressed and did not mean it. I told him calmly that I was respecting his boundaries. He did not want responsibility for my care, and that also meant he did not receive benefits. He asked what benefits I was talking about. I told him good night and ended the call. My hands were steady, my heart was calm. For the first time in my 71 years, I was putting myself first, and it felt like relief after long restraint. 2 days later, on Saturday morning, I was pruning roses in my garden when a car screeched into my driveway. A door slammed, heavy footsteps rushed toward me. Before I could stand, David burst through the garden gate. His face was red with anger. He demanded to know what I had done. I set down my pruning shears and told him to lower his voice because the neighbors could hear. He said he did not care and told me the bank confirmed that I had transferred almost everything. I told him it was placed into a trust and that it was none of his concern. He stepped closer and said the money was supposed to be his. I corrected him. Robert worked his whole life for us, for our family and our shared life. He was gone, and the money was mine to use as I chose. David said he would fight it and prove I was not competent. I stood up and met his eyes. I told him to try. I had medical records, witnesses, and documentation for every decision I had made. All he had was a text message saying he would not take care of me. His face turned pale. He admitted they needed the money and had been counting on it. I asked what they needed it for. He did not answer. In that moment, I finally understood. To him, I was not his mother. I was his retirement plan. I told him to leave my house and not return unless invited. He left, but I knew it was not over. I locked my doors and called Thomas. It has started, I told him. I needed to understand exactly what my legal protections were. Thomas moved quickly. By Monday morning, I had copies of all my legal documents secured in a safe deposit box at my new bank. I also had digital backups stored on a secure cloud service. In addition, Thomas prepared a formal letter stating my mental competency and confirming that every decision I made was voluntary and informed. He also suggested drafting a letter to David that formally documented my reasoning. If the situation escalated into litigation, Thomas explained, having a clear written record would matter. Not emotional language, just facts. I spent Tuesday afternoon writing that letter. It was more difficult than I expected. How do you explain to your own child that they have failed you without sounding resentful? How do you describe betrayal using legal language? In the end, I kept it simple. David, this letter confirms that I, Margaret Ann Morrison, being of sound mind and body, have chosen to establish a living trust and designate beneficiaries according to my own wishes. This decision is based on your stated unwillingness to provide care or support in my later years, as communicated to me on. I respect your right to prioritize your own family, and I am exercising my right to prioritize my own legacy. This decision is not a punishment. It is an act of self-preservation. I had the letter notarized at the bank. Patricia witnessed my signature, along with another bank officer I had never met. No one could later claim I was confused, pressured, or manipulated. That Wednesday, David returned. This time Jessica came with him. I heard their car pull into the driveway around 2 in the afternoon. I was sitting in my living room reading, a cup of tea growing cold on the side table. When the doorbell rang, I considered not answering, but avoiding them would only delay what was coming. Jessica stood on my porch wearing an expensive coat, one I was fairly certain I had helped pay for through one of their so-called emergency loans. Her smile was tight and controlled. "Margaret, we need to talk. Can we come in?" "No," I said. "We can talk here." "Mom, do not be ridiculous," David started. "I am not being ridiculous," I replied. "You arrived without calling. You shouted at me in my garden. Now you expect hospitality. Say what you need to say from the porch." Jessica's smile faded. "Fine. We are here because we are worried about you. David told me about these sudden financial changes, and honestly, Margaret, it is concerning. People your age can be vulnerable to scams or manipulation." "Are you suggesting I have been scammed?" I asked. "We are saying you are not thinking clearly," David said. "You have never made rash decisions like this, moving all your money, cutting us out." "I did not cut you out of anything you were ever entitled to," I said. "You removed yourself when you made it clear I was a burden you did not want." "I never said that," David replied. I took out my phone, opened the text message, and held it out. "Read it again. Do not expect me to take care of you when you are old. I have my own life and family." Your words, dated, time-stamped, saved. Jessica's eyes widened as she looked at David. "You sent that?" she asked. David flushed. "I was upset. She had been asking about money for roof repairs. I had just lost a client, and it does not matter. She is my mother. She cannot just disinherit me." "Actually," I said calmly, "I can, and I have. Not out of anger, David, out of self-respect. You defined the relationship. I am honoring that." "This is about money," Jessica said sharply. "You think we only care about money? We visit, we call, we include you in our lives." "You visit 4 times a year," I said. "You call when you need something. You included me as long as I was paying for your lifestyle." Then I looked directly at Jessica. "How is your mother, by the way? Has she recovered from the cancer treatment I paid for?" She said nothing. David grabbed her arm. "We do not have to listen to this. Mom, you have 1 week to fix this. 1 week to reverse these changes. If you do not, I am calling a lawyer. I will have you declared incompetent. I will fight this trust." "Go ahead," I said. "I have a lawyer as well, and documentation you cannot overcome, medical records, witnesses, a full record of your financial exploitation. Try." They left. Jessica was crying. David did not say a word. I watched them drive away and felt nothing, no satisfaction, no regret, only resolve. That night, however, fear returned. What if David did hire a lawyer? What if he convinced a judge I was incompetent? I had heard stories of adult children gaining guardianship and taking full control of their parents' lives. I slept poorly. By morning, I was exhausted and shaking. I called Thomas again. "He is threatening legal action," I told him. "Can he actually do this?" "He can try," Thomas said, "but you are prepared. Your medical records are clear. You have witnesses and documentation. Unless he can prove real incompetence, which he cannot, he has no case. But the stress of fighting it," I said. "I know," Thomas replied. "That is why I recommend you take a short break. Go somewhere peaceful. Stay with a friend. Let him exhaust himself while you regain your strength." He was right. I called my friend Linda, whom I had known since college. She lived 2 hours away in a small beach town and owned a bookstore. When I explained the situation in general terms, she immediately invited me to stay. "Bring comfortable clothes and nothing else," she said. "We will walk on the beach and remember what peace feels like." I packed a bag and left Thursday morning. I did not tell David where I was going. For 3 days I walked on the beach. I helped Linda in her shop. I read novels I had put off for years. I slept deeply. I remembered who I was beyond being David's mother. I was Margaret, a woman who built a life, loved deeply, survived loss, and deserved respect. When I returned home Sunday evening, I felt ready. A letter was waiting for me, not in the mailbox, but slipped under my front door. It was written on expensive stationery in Jessica's handwriting. She apologized for David's behavior. She blamed stress. She spoke of family, grandchildren, and reconciliation. She invited me to dinner at my favorite restaurant. She asked for another chance. I read the letter twice. The manipulation was obvious. The appeal to guilt, the use of grandchildren, the framing of me as the problem. The old Margaret might have hesitated. The new Margaret placed the letter into a folder labeled documentation and wrote down the date. 2 days later, flowers arrived. 24 roses with a card that said, "Mom, I am sorry. Let us talk. Love, David." I photographed the card, added it to my records, and donated the flowers to the nursing home down the street. Then the calls began. Not angry calls, pleading ones. Jessica called first, her voice soft and apologetic. "Margaret, please." "We all make mistakes," Jessica said. "Can we not move past this? Family is supposed to forgive." "Family is also supposed to respect each other," I replied. "Family should treat each other with basic decency and not see each other as sources of money. That is not fair. We never—" "Jessica," I said, interrupting her, "I have records of every dollar I have given you over the past 4 years, more than $47,000 for emergencies that were never clearly explained. Would you like to go through them together?" She ended the call without another word. David called next. His tone had changed. He sounded wounded and confused. "Mom, I do not understand what has happened to you. You have changed. You are not the person who raised me." "You are right," I said. "The person who raised you ignored her own dignity and put everyone else first. I am not that person anymore. That is not fair. Please, Mom, just have dinner with us. One dinner. If you still feel the same way afterward, then fine. Just give us a chance." I almost agreed, not because I trusted them, but because I was tired, because constantly saying no was draining, because a small part of me still hoped my son could change. Then I remembered the text message, the clear lack of respect in those words. "Do not expect me to take care of you." He had shown me the truth. I did not need to doubt what I had already seen. "No, David," I said. "This is over. You made your choice. I am making mine." "You are going to regret this," he replied. "Is that a threat?" I asked. There was silence. "Then it is a prediction," I said. He hung up. I sat at my kitchen table with my hands folded, breathing slowly. I questioned myself. Was I doing the right thing, or was I allowing pride to destroy what little remained of my family? I called Linda. She listened as I explained everything: the letters, the flowers, the phone calls. "They are trying to wear you down," she said. "That is a common manipulation tactic. They are not sorry, Margaret. They are upset about losing access to your money." "But what if I am wrong?" I asked. "What if I am being too harsh?" "Did they apologize for the text message?" she asked. I thought about it. David had blamed stress. He said he did not mean it, but he never said he was sorry for hurting me. Jessica never apologized at all. "No," I said slowly. "They apologized for my reaction, not for what they did." "That tells you everything," Linda said. She was right. I needed more than her reassurance. I needed to remember that David and Jessica were not my entire world. I returned to my church group. I had stopped attending after Robert passed away. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected. I called my niece Emma, who drove down from Seattle the following weekend, and took me to lunch. Emma listened carefully. At 28, she was closer to David's age than mine, but she understood something I struggled to express. "Aunt Margaret," she said, "some people see relationships as transactions. They take without giving. It sounds like David and Jessica fall into that category. He is my son, I whispered. I know, she replied. That makes it harder, but you still have the right to protect yourself. That support mattered. Every conversation, every coffee, every church service reminded me that I was not alone, not imagining things, and not wrong for setting boundaries. By the end of the second week, the calls stopped. The silence was both a relief and unsettling. I wondered what they were doing. Had they accepted my decision, or were they preparing something else? I should not have hoped for acceptance. 3 weeks after I returned from Linda's, they showed up on a Sunday morning. I was eating breakfast when I heard voices in my driveway. David's, Jessica's, and the excited voices of children. My grandchildren. They had brought my grandchildren. I opened the door before they rang the bell. Charlie, 6 years old, ran toward me. Grandma, we brought you cookies. Mom said you were not feeling well. My chest tightened. I hugged him, breathing in the familiar scent of grass and snacks. His sister Mia, 4 years old, stood back for a moment before stepping forward for her hug. Over their heads I looked at David. He smiled, but his expression was cold. We thought we would surprise you, Jessica said cheerfully. It is such a nice day. We could have a picnic in the backyard like before. You should have called first, I said carefully. Grandma, do you not want to see us? Charlie asked, confused. Of course I wanted to see him, but not like this, not used as leverage. I do want to see you, I said gently, but grown-ups should always call before visiting. We did call, David said. You did not answer. That was true. I had seen his name and let it go to voicemail because I needed peace. Come on, Mom, he added. The kids are excited. You would not turn away your own grandchildren, would you? The message was clear. Accept us or lose them. I stepped aside. They settled into my living room. The children sat on the floor with coloring books Jessica had brought. David and Jessica sat on my sofa comfortably. Jessica placed a container of homemade cookies on the table, knowing they were my favorite. David commented on how well I maintained the house. Every word felt intentional. After 20 minutes, Jessica spoke. We have been thinking about everything. We want to apologize. Yes, David added. I handled things badly. I should never have sent that text. I was stressed about work and money. I took it out on you. I am sorry. It sounded practiced. What exactly are you apologizing for? I asked. Jessica hesitated. For hurting you, for making you feel like we did not care. But do you care? I asked. Or do you care about my money? David's jaw tightened. That is not fair, he said. You called me incompetent. You threatened legal action. Now you are sitting in my living room expecting me to undo my trust because you brought children and cookies. We are trying to fix this, Jessica said sharply. You are making it impossible. I set boundaries after you told me you would not take care of me. I protected my assets after years of unexplained emergencies, and somehow I am the problem. Lower your voice, David whispered. The kids are right there. Then you should not have brought them into this. Jessica stood up. Charlie, Mia, go play in the backyard. Grandma has a beautiful garden. The children ran outside. As soon as the door closed, Jessica dropped her polite tone. Let us be honest, she said. You are being selfish. You have more money than you will ever need, and you are keeping it while your family struggles. Struggles? I asked. You drive a Mercedes. Your children attend private school. Where is the struggle? That is none of your business, David snapped. But my money is your business, David said. We are your family. After everything we have done, what have you done? I stood up and faced him directly. Name one thing you have done for me in the past 5 years that was not connected to your expectation of inheritance. They could not answer. The silence said everything. "This is what is going to happen," David said, his voice low and threatening. "You are going to call your lawyer. You are going to dissolve that trust. You are going to restore our inheritance, and you are going to do it by the end of the month." "And if I do not?" I asked. Jessica answered calmly, as if discussing a routine matter. "Then you will never see your grandchildren again. We will move if we have to. We will tell them you chose money over family. We will tell them you did not want to see them." The words struck deep. My grandchildren. The thought of never seeing Charlie's gap-toothed smile or hearing Mia sing off-key nearly broke me. But even through the pain, I understood exactly what they were doing. This was manipulation. They were willing to hurt their own children, to damage their relationship with me, to use them as leverage, all for money. "Get out," I said quietly. "Mom." "Get out of my house now," I repeated, "and if you ever use those children as leverage again, I will document it. I will make sure any judge who reviews it understands exactly what kind of parents you are." David's face darkened with rage. "You are going to regret this," he said. "The only thing I regret," I replied, "is not seeing who you really were years ago." They left quickly, pulling the children from the backyard with barely a goodbye. Charlie looked back, confused. "But Grandma—" The car door slammed shut before he could finish. I watched them drive away, my body shaking uncontrollably. Had I just lost my grandchildren? Would David actually follow through? The fear made me physically ill. I rushed to the bathroom and dry heaved over the toilet, my body reacting to the stress. But beneath the fear was something stronger: anger. How dare they use innocent children this way? How dare they threaten me with my own grandchildren? I knew I could not give in. If I did, I would teach them that threats worked, that manipulation was effective, that they could treat me however they wanted as long as they held my grandchildren hostage. I called Thomas immediately. They threatened to cut me off from my grandchildren unless I reversed the trust. His response was immediate. "Document everything. Write down exactly what was said. If they follow through, we may need it later, especially for custody considerations." Custody. The word made my heart race, but he was right. This had become a legal battle, and I needed to act carefully. The lawyer's letter arrived 3 weeks later. Not from Thomas. From David's attorney, a downtown firm known for aggressive family litigation. The letter stated that their client, David Morrison, had concerns regarding my mental competency and recent financial decisions made under potential duress or diminished capacity. They requested that I submit to an independent psychiatric evaluation. I read the letter calmly while sitting at my kitchen table with my morning coffee. So this was his strategy. Fine. I called Thomas immediately. "They are going after competency. They want a psychiatric evaluation." "Let them," Thomas said. "You will pass any evaluation they give you. But we will control the process, agree to the evaluation, but insist on selecting the psychiatrist from a court-approved list." Within a week, I was sitting across from Dr. Patricia Hernandez, a forensic psychiatrist specializing in elder competency cases. She was professional, thorough, and impossible to manipulate. For 3 hours, she questioned me about my life, education, finances, and relationship with David. She administered cognitive tests, memory assessments, and logic evaluations. She reviewed my medical records and interviewed my primary physician. When we finished, she reviewed her notes and looked directly at me. "Mrs. Morrison, I will submit my formal report to the court, but I can tell you now there is no evidence of cognitive decline, diminished capacity, or undue influence. Your decisions are rational, informed, and intentional." I thanked her. Then she leaned forward slightly. "I have seen this pattern before. Adult children who expect inheritance react badly when parents assert independence. What you are experiencing is financial elder abuse in reverse. They are attempting to pressure you into compliance. Her words confirmed everything I had felt. The competency hearing was scheduled for November 15th. The courtroom was gray, quiet, and tense. David and Jessica sat across the aisle with their attorney, a well-dressed man who avoided eye contact. I sat beside Thomas, composed and prepared. David's attorney spoke first. He described me as a grieving widow, isolated and vulnerable, making erratic financial decisions without family involvement. He implied that I had been influenced by my attorney and suggested early-stage dementia. Then Dr. Hernandez testified. She dismantled their case in less than 15 minutes. She detailed my strong cognitive performance, my full understanding of my finances, and my clear reasoning. She stated that I lived independently, drove myself, maintained social relationships, and showed no signs of impairment. Mrs. Morrison demonstrates above-average financial literacy and reasoning for her age group, she told the judge. Her decisions are autonomous and competent. David's attorney tried again. Is it not unusual for a mother to disinherit her only child? Unusual, Dr. Hernandez replied, does not mean incompetent. Mrs. Morrison has documented reasons for her decisions. Agreement from her son is not required. The judge, a woman in her 60s, looked directly at David. Mr. Morrison, did you send your mother a text stating, "Do not expect me to take care of you when you are old. I have my own life and family"? David turned red. I was upset, he said. She was asking about money. So you were upset about money, the judge replied, and now you are upset that she is distributing her money according to her wishes rather than yours. She turned to me. Mrs. Morrison, has anyone coerced you into these decisions? No, Your Honor. Do you understand the consequences of your choices? Yes, completely. Do you wish to change your estate plan? No, Your Honor. It reflects exactly what I want. The gavel struck. Petition for incompetency is denied. Mrs. Morrison is of sound mind and fully entitled to manage her estate. Case dismissed. David's attorney gathered his papers quickly. Jessica looked stunned. David stared at me with open hatred. As we exited the courtroom, he grabbed my arm. This is not over, he said. Thomas stepped between us immediately. Mr. Morrison, further contact may constitute harassment. David leaned close before walking away. When you are old, sick, and alone, do not come to me. I looked at him and felt only clarity. I will not be alone, I said. I have friends, I have community, I have self-respect. What do you have? He did not answer. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt hollow. Thomas placed a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing. Then why did it hurt so much? Love and betrayal can exist at the same time, Thomas said gently. He is still your son. You are allowed to grieve that. I nodded, unable to trust my voice, but as we stepped out of the courthouse into the autumn sunlight, something inside me shifted. The doubt was gone. The guilt was gone. What remained was clarity. I had won, and I was not finished. 2 months after the hearing, I received a registered letter from David and Jessica's mortgage company. They had missed 3 payments, and foreclosure proceedings were beginning. How did I know? Because years earlier, they had listed me as an emergency contact and never updated it. They were in serious financial trouble. The expensive car, the private school, the lifestyle they maintained, all of it was supported by debt. They had been counting on my inheritance to rescue them. For a moment, I felt sympathy. They had children. Charlie and Mia should not suffer because their parents made reckless choices. Then I remembered Jessica's threat. You will never see your grandchildren again. I remembered David's hatred in the courthouse hallway. I remembered years of manipulation disguised as need. I made a decision. I hired a private investigator, a retired police detective Thomas recommended for estate-related matters. I told him everything, where my money went, what they spent it on. I asked for documentation. What he uncovered was shocking. Over the past 6 years, David and Jessica had spent more than $200,000 beyond their income. Not on necessities, but on luxury vacations to Europe, a boat they barely used, cosmetic surgery for Jessica, country club memberships, and private school tuition they could not afford. Then came the most disturbing discovery. They had taken out multiple loans against my expected inheritance, different lenders, different agreements. They had been confident they would eventually receive everything I owned and borrowed accordingly. The investigator also found emails. Years earlier, David had contacted an estate attorney asking about ways to accelerate inheritance when parents were uncooperative. The attorney refused, but the emails existed. I sat in Thomas's office reading the report, feeling physically ill. "He planned this for years," I said quietly. "It appears that way," Thomas replied carefully. "Margaret, do you want to pursue criminal charges? We have evidence of fraud and possible elder financial exploitation." I imagined David in handcuffs, my grandchildren visiting their father in prison, the scandal. "No," I said, "no criminal charges, but I want them to know that I know." Thomas helped me draft a letter. It was delivered by courier to David's home on a Tuesday morning. "David and Jessica, I am now in possession of full documentation detailing your financial activity, including loans taken against my anticipated estate and communications regarding accelerating my inheritance. I also have records of your threats to deny me access to my grandchildren, your false claims of my incompetence, and your harassment. I will not provide financial assistance now or at any point in the future. Your mortgage issues, debts, and financial decisions are solely your responsibility. However, I am not cruel. Enclosed are resources for financial counseling, debt consolidation, and family therapy. I recommend you use them. My estate plan remains unchanged. You will receive nothing. I do have one final offer. If you ever offer a genuine apology, not to gain something, but because you truly understand the harm you caused, and if you wish to rebuild a relationship based on respect rather than financial expectation, my door remains open, not to my money, but to my heart. That choice is yours. Margaret. I heard nothing for 3 weeks. Then on Christmas Eve, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Charlie and Mia standing there, holding the hand of a woman I did not recognize. David's car was parked down the street, but he did not get out. The woman introduced herself as a court-appointed supervisor for family visits. David and Jessica had lost their house. They had moved in with Jessica's parents in another state. As part of their bankruptcy process, they were required to allow supervised visitation with me. It was not kindness. It was a court order. I did not care. I had my grandchildren for 2 hours. We baked cookies. We read stories. We played while snow fell softly outside. When they left, Mia hugged me tightly. "Grandma, can we come back?" "Any time," I said. "Any time." I watched the car leave. David never looked toward my house. I had won, though not the way I once hoped. I wanted my son back as he once was, loving and honest. But I won the things that mattered most: my autonomy, my dignity, my peace. 6 months later, spring arrived in Portland with bright mornings and blooming cherry trees. I continued my 3-mile runs each day and felt stronger than I had in years. My doctor told me I had the heart health of someone 15 years younger. "What you are doing is working," she said. What I was doing was living fully. I joined a book club on Linda's suggestion. Women from their 50s to their 80s met weekly to talk about books and life. They became close friends. I began volunteering at the Children's Hospital, one of the beneficiaries of my trust. I read to children in treatment, played games, and comforted worried parents. It gave me purpose and helped fill the space left by my grandchildren. The scholarship fund at Roberts University had already helped 3 students. Their thank you letters moved me deeply. This was legacy. My niece Emma and I grew close. She visited monthly, and we developed a real friendship. "You are the wisest person I know," she told me once. It meant more than she realized. I accepted my choices. I mourned the relationship I wished I had with David, but I did not regret protecting myself. I learned that love does not require accepting abuse. Family is not defined by blood, but by respect. My home was filled with friends, laughter, and purpose. I attended the symphony, painted again, sold 2 pieces at a local gallery, traveled often, and even went on a cruise to Alaska with my church group. This was the life I earned. David and Jessica's situation continued to decline. I did not seek details, but news travels in a city like Portland. They declared bankruptcy. They moved into a small apartment. Jessica took a retail job. David lost his business and worked in electronics sales. Their children left private school. The boat was repossessed. The Mercedes replaced by a 10-year-old car. They built everything on money they did not have, expecting an inheritance they never earned. I felt sadness, not satisfaction. Sadness for wasted years. Sadness for my grandchildren. But I learned an essential truth. You cannot save people from their own choices. You can only protect yourself and build a meaningful life. Supervised visits with Charlie and Mia continued monthly. "Why do we not see you more?" Charlie asked once. "Sometimes adults make choices that hurt people," I told him. "But I want you to know this. I will always love you." When they turn 18, they will each receive a letter from me. It will explain everything, offer support for their future, and remind them they are loved, not through money, but through respect. Looking back, that text message gave me something unexpected. Freedom. Freedom to see clearly. Freedom to choose myself. Freedom to live with dignity. Setting boundaries is not cruelty. It is self-preservation. You can love someone and still refuse to be manipulated. True family is built on respect, not obligation. My legacy is not a bank account. It is the lives touched, the kindness given, and the strength to choose self-respect. What would you do if someone you loved saw you only as a paycheck? Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it gives someone else the courage to choose themselves. You deserve respect. Always.